joining this global. Inside. Thanks for everyone for joining this Global Food and Environment Institute at the University of Leeds seminar. And today we're delighted to have Christine Bosch, and she'll be talking about finding value in food waste, transforming losses into opportunities. And just before I give you a bit of an introduction about Christine, if I just ask you to turn your audio and video off. We will be having 10 minutes at the end for questions, but we'll ask you to put your questions in the chat and then I'll read them out for Christine. So if you could just flip to the next slide, please, Christine. Yep, so I'm Nick. I'm a Professor of Artificial Intelligence in Food in the School of Food Science and Nutrition, a member of the Global Food Environment Institute, and my research is all around data and digital technologies in food systems and food manufacturing. And I'm also the Deputy Director of Research and Innovation in the school and Deputy Director and Industry Engagement Champion of the National Alternative Proteins Innovation Centre. And I'm absolutely delighted to be chairing this. So next slide, please. Oh, we've gone forward anyway. So yeah, I'll turn back a slide so I can give you your introduction. Yeah, thanks, Christine. So yeah, absolute pleasure. Christine's been at the in the school at the university a long time now, and I first met Christine when I was working here before, and it's been a really pleasure to see how her research has evolved over those times. So Christine is the research group leader in nutritional sciences and epidemiology in the School of Food Science and Nutrition. Her research is rooted in diet and health, with a focus on food bioactives, phytochemicals, antioxidants, and the aim of her research is to understand biological properties of bioactives and the mechanisms by which they may benefit towards prevention or alleviation of metabolic diseases. I think one of the things that's been really interesting seeing Christine's career evolve is not just focusing on the health side, but also what she'll touch about in her talk today, which is the environmental side of food, because food's extremely complex. And when we think about food, we need to be thinking, how can we make food that's affordable, tastes good, is good for us from a health perspective, but also minimizes impact on the planet. So again, I think it's great to see how Christine is looking at how we valorize food, but taking that health element. So really excited to listen to her talk. And for those who are just arriving, please put your questions in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. So over to you, Christine.
Well, thank you so much, Nick. I'm just going to forward to my first slide. Thanks for the intro, and thanks to Giffy for inviting me as part of this seminar. This is great to be here. Yeah, as it was announced, my talk is about finding value in food waste, transforming losses into opportunities. Okay. Just to give you some brief outline of what to expect in the next 20 minutes or so. So I will refer to the target, to my target, phytochemicals, food waste, but also valorization, give you some examples from recent and current projects, and to summarize that up in the end, okay? The thinking to leave in this slide at all, but it really refers to the target and also the potential. I'm a food bioactive person. My interest is in bioactive compounds, which we can find in our diet. So this refers to pigmented pigments, as you can see here on the slide, anthocyanins and betalains, red pigments, but also carotenoids, chlorophyll, and a number of others. So many of the compounds of interest are colored, but not all of them. It's just an example. So I work on a range of compounds, which importantly they exert different bioactivities, which is my main interest. And if you think in the sort of conventional situation, or it's these compounds being in our fruit and vegetable, for example, which we normally consume and eat, but it's also and it's understanding how they link to our health, to health benefit, but it's also to understand how can we perhaps enrich them or target them towards specific functionality for us, if you think of supplements or functional food for that matter. But in addition to that, many other applications could be linked or derived from these compounds. Okay. So I've done actually on the ones you see, I've done research on all of these, with an emphasis perhaps on the first two, on the red pigments. Okay, let's move on. So agri-food waste, the challenge, I've named it, as many or most of us will be aware, the estimate is that we are wasting around a third of the food that is produced, is lost or wasted every year. So the distinction between loss and waste is usually around where it arises, kind of before or after the farm gate. But if we talk about food waste, generally we refer to the whole supply chain from production to post-harvest, including industrial processing, distribution, also domestic processing and consumption. So everything from the farm through the industry and suppliers to what happens at home. And sort of the loss of waste looks different around the globe. So this is some data or an overview from the FAO, where you can see the different global regions. On the left, more industrialized, compared to the right side. And it's really interesting. I left this in because I think it's quite interesting to see where actually waste arises. Okay, in blue is the consumer, and the brown is sort of more production to retailing. So we can see, depending on where we are on the globe, this this differs, but generally is referred to the generation of waste, in particular in industrialized nations. It's mainly household. Numbers differ depending on the source you look at. Household, followed by food processing, service, production, and wholesale and retail. Depending on sources, numbers may differ, but we can find wastage along the whole food chain. That's the main point, and this may differ to country and region. Okay, but importantly, as I mentioned, sort of the distinction, the terms food loss and food waste. It is now, and I think one of the other reader in this presenter in the seminar series has pointed this out, that the pre-farm gate waste is not included in the official waste figures. So if we talk about a third being lost, it's farm gate to consumer. And there are some interesting sort of reports, World Wildlife Fund, WRAP, and other contribution that detail this, which is quite interesting. And I've taken the figure from there. So if you imagine that the carrot is sort of, and this is UK, if you think about the production numbers, this is UK related. But if you think of post-farm gate, and on the right side, the carrot with the green. So the green is what we are leaving behind or generating on the farm that's actually not being utilized. And the reasons for that is, or the main reference to that is overproduction at farm level, which may be due to contractual obligations or other reasons to ensure a target crop yields. But the dimensions of 25%, between 20 and 30% is the estimate for that. Dimension will vary with the type of crop. So it depends, yeah. Okay. My referring to the targets, sort of for my own agenda, fruit and vegetable waste is in my particular focus, and you can see here sort of production volumes, and this is global volumes, and we can see perhaps what on a global scale the main crops are, which is tomato, citrus, banana, apple, grapes, and some others. But again, this of course depends on where, which country you're looking at, where these are being produced. Citrus is not normally, unless in your conservatory or greenhouse, not normally grown in the UK. But interestingly, we're dealing with with waste arising through production from there. So that's generally, so we have fruit and vegetable waste types. So we have roots, tubers, and different parts of different crops, which makes it very not very homogeneous in our considerations. But they are characterized by high water content, high concentration of biodegradable organic substances. For example, starch, carbohydrates, lipids, organic acids, and others. And this is they are dealt with in different ways, traditionally landfill, incineration, so depending, many of which we know, for many of which we have developed avenues, but there is huge opportunity there. Okay, if I move to the next slide, which picks up on sort of what happens with any of, if we think of fruit and vegetable production and processing, we don't eat tomatoes, we may eat to some extent as they are, but we also have products derived from there that leaves behind skins and seeds and pulp, pomace, all the different parts depending on the processing. Conventionally, what happens with all of that traditionally went to animal feeding or landfill, as was just mentioned. Composting is an option, or incineration, thermal treatment. So these are sort of more conventional practices, and lots of valorization approaches. So this is not a new topic. Lots of valorization approaches have been developed and are being used, depending also perhaps on the crop: extraction, chemical conversion, biological conversion, synthesis, just to name some of it, to develop products with an added value derived from there. So there is lots going on in this space, trying to understand how materials arising at different stages in production, in processing, etc., could be repurposed instead of landfilling to find value and develop applications, products, etc., out of there. In particular, in my opinion, although, as I mentioned, lots of work is already being done there, and if you look in the publication space, a lot published, but there are still lots of solutions are sort of tunneled. As part of sort of one project, you only look at one narrow aspect. So I think this is a large playing field. We have a lot of underutilized resources also still, and there is still an increasing interest in different industries to recover and compounds of interest and develop them into products. For example, my interest, as I said, is phytochemicals. The right side, you can see this under the polyphenols, which is one of the groups of phytochemicals, but there are also bulk ingredients. If you think of fiber, if you think of protein, and they can, of course, go all different destinations. The protein interest into food and feed, the fiber also for food, or perhaps packaging, or other similar purposes. So many different industries have an interest in that. And my particular focus is on these antioxidants, polyphenols, which have demonstrated which have demonstrated a range of properties. For example, these antioxidant properties, but also anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial properties, and a range of others. So all these have been associated with or have potential to be sort of looked at and developed into applications. An example from previous research, I picked some examples for this talk, and one of them is the CitrusSafe project, which some of you may be familiar with. I think the website is still up there. So this was a few years back. I was involved in this. We had some funding from Combination, BBSSC, Newton, and also UK, China bilateral funding stream to look at citrus waste from juicing and other industries. From the Chinese side in particular, it was actually the mandarin production. If you think you go to the supermarket and get a tin of mandarins, it was remainders from that production, but also orange juice. So we were interested in looking at they are the biopolymers, the fibers, in particular pectin in particular in citrus, but also like the polyphenols in there. How can we get them out, separate them, and develop applications? The purpose of that research was food packaging, to develop food safety and health applications. Packaging was one of the main outcomes, and for example, the biopolymers, the fibers, were used to develop the packaging, and the polyphenols, the antioxidants, which were extracted out earlier, they were added into later to develop the functionality of the packaging to increase shelf life of meat products, for example. Another outcome we looked at was dental care. So a lot of these bioactives in citrus, they have a very high potential for antimicrobial properties and efficacy, and we've tested them in in dental systems, and we demonstrated a really high potential for these to be developed into real applications. Another arm was skincare. That involvement of SME, Caracol, in fact, who were taking some of these ingredients, which we derived from the orange peel, into skincare products, which I believe are now on the market. Okay, so just a quick overview, sort of, on the previous CitrusSafe project, where citrus, different streams of citrus waste, orange and mandarin, were investigated, and application sort of prototypes and real applications being developed. Another example, a more recent and ongoing research example, is beetroot. You'll all be familiar with the beet, and there is which probably be most familiar with beetroot juice, the beet itself, but also beetroot juice, which has increasing demand, which is due to sort of the discovery or the realization of the high nitrate content in beetroot, which is very effective in lowering blood pressure. So there's increasing production of beetroot juice in the UK, but also in a number of other countries. That leaves behind a lot of waste, is pomace waste. But we've also dealing, in fact, with overproduction on the farm, oversized beets. So for the main, I don't want to name anyone, but the main retailers, if you go and buy beetroot, you can buy it raw, but you can buy it boiled in these little packages of 3 or 4 beet. If they are too big, they get rejected by the retailer. This is actually a waste. They're perfect quality-wise, perfect beet roots, but they cannot go into retail. Okay, so different sort of beet materials that we are kind of looking into in different parts of research. Important. So we've tested a lot of extraction, stability, and different investigations. So I don't want to go into detail with that, but it's important sort of to emphasize that compounds, bioactives in beetroot, like in other crops, they are very sensitive to oxygen, to heat, to any treatment. So stability testing is really important, as you can see on the picture. Depending on the temperature, you are losing your pigments, your color. really quickly. Also on the right side, you can see this sort of tree on what we find perhaps as bioactive compounds in beetroot, and I've mentioned the nitrate, which is on the left side, and there are these red pigments, which we can obviously see, but also a number of other compounds. And that's to emphasize that we're dealing with a very complex ingredients. It's not single compounds, it's a mixture of different compounds we're dealing with in all these types in beet and similar types of fruit and vegetable materials. To show you sort of some quick research data. We've been looking into beets in particular in sort of waste products. What is the value? What is the value of beetroot waste, which is BW? So this is the third and fourth column in each graph, and compared to sort of whole beetroot powder and also beetroot juice. So all of these we kind of compared on a similar basis. And what we can see is that these red pigments, even if you have your pomace after pressing, well, the pigment content is still really high. The polyphenol content, which also includes other bioactives, is also quite high. And antioxidant activity is also good, is comparable to the whole beet. So what does it mean? But we have this gray column in the end, which refers to AD is air dried, and FD is freeze dried, so a more protected and a not very protected way of drying. So there is value in the material, but it really depends how you process it, because you will lose major components if you don't watch out for that. And that leads me over to sort of current project activities, which are based on all this initial work on the beetroot, but also includes other fruit and vegetable waste streams. So we're looking at not household waste in any case, it's oversized, so it's farm waste, overproduction, it's primary processing and processed side stream derived waste, beet and other fruit and vegetables. And we're in the fortunate situation to receive Innovate UK funding for on this concept, which you see on this slide, actually for two projects, but the main project is our SNAP project. It's also on the university website, which is about the development, the refinement of these waste streams, exploration into different ways of processing and developing ingredients, active ingredients that go into feed formulations to benefit pig production. And the models we are using are the weaning pigs, where intestinal health is a real issue. We are in an antibiotic-free zone, so adding benefit into the feed for young pigs to better condition them and keep their intestinal health up. This is a real target, but also the finisher pig, improving meat qualities, of adding bioactives in the last month into the feed of a finisher pig. Can you improve meat quality every day? You can see that Cranswick is involved, so one of the biggest pig producers in the UK, every day on the shelf. So increased meat quality, upkeep of sensory property every day is a win for them. So our current project SNAP is operating in that space. We are almost complete, another quarter, a bit more than another quarter to go. This is sensitive information. I would love to show you some results, but we are restricted at the moment. But I would like to sort of indicate sort of the interdisciplinarity of this approach. And this is, I think, really important in this seminar context as well. So we've got different entities as part of the project. We've got two SMEs and a large company, and we've got Agritech, formerly CL, as a separate entity as well. So they and myself from the School of Food Science, as well as colleagues in FBS in animal science. So the joint work on sort of to deliver material processing in a sustainable way. So big challenges, but big achievements as well, to stabilize material, to bring it in a way that is kind of can be formulated into feed and then actually fed. We are in the lucky situation. We've got the National Pig Center at the University Farm, where these trials can be conducted in a semi-commercial and well-controlled environment. And we've got Agritech as an entity to sort of facilitate engagement with stakeholders and also conduct the techno-economic and life cycle analysis. If you look at sustainability, all these elements I think are really important. Okay, so just to give you some flavor on what the SNAP project is about, we've just been awarded another Innovate UK grant, which is called Spin Life. And this is really building on the same on the same or similar concept. It's about valorizing. You can see berries there, but we're looking at fruit and vegetable side streams, including beet. So same sources, but food grade requirement, food and feed grade is not exactly the same, and methodologies to stabilize and enrich material for it to be formulated. These are actually first results from adding anthocyanins and red pigments from beet into products. So we're aiming to produce prototypes as outcome of this project, but it's also to understand stability in the processing process, but also during digestion, what are effective doses and acceptable formulations, because we are targeting, again, like in the animal project, we're targeting the gut to improve inflammation and microbiome sort of balance in the gut environment, which are concerning issues as we age and the chronic disease conditions. Okay, so this is the conceptual overview on that, but this project has just started and has over a year to go. Just to quickly point out the challenges of working with fruit and vegetable waste. There are raw material related issues, microbiology. There are yeast, bacteria, they're everywhere and they immediately start growing if you've got starch, and as pointed out earlier, favorable environment. We are also dealing often, or you have different probably fruit and vegetables together instead of single stream. That's or another challenge. There may be contaminants present. They may come from the material itself, but also from anything that happens to it. So auditing or trails are lacking in this space largely. So processing related, of course, extraction require what solvents do you use. If you want to be sustainable, it needs to be in a green way. So challenges on that as well. But how can you, depending on what you develop as applications, enrichment, whatever you do, if you recover something, you may enrich heavy metals, anti-nutrients, any other compounds you'd rather not have in your material. So key considerations, all these are, as well as in sort of linking to the challenge for logistics with this material. If you think of grape waste, after pressing, for example, it needs to be picked up, dealt with within hours, so you don't even have days. Okay, so just to summarize, and give you some take-home messages. Perhaps I think, in my view, and I hope you agree with me on that, fruit and vegetable waste streams are highly valuable sources of phytochemicals and, of course, other ingredients as well. The nature of the material requires quick access, localized solutions as well, and depending on the nature of the side streams, many applications. I presented about food and feed and some non-food, but there are also including cosmetics. Many of these are yet to be, and others are yet to be explored. Material just is not always in the right quality that you need, food, feed, etc., or cosmetic. Safety concerns, of course, need to be addressed. I remember initial conversations with industry. Oh, you're working with waste. It's not, waste is not waste, yeah, but there are safety concerns, anti-nutrition factors, heavy metals, etc. But opportunities present themselves on all levels, on the whole chain for exploration and innovation. And of course, we need circular interdisciplinary approaches to achieve maximum output and impact, real world impact with our activities. So sustainability of concept and approach is key. And that leads me over to my very last slide, which is thanking you for joining and listening, and me looking forward to some questions.
Thanks, Christine. That was great, and you were 30 seconds away from me interrupting you, so
not too bad.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Can I just all attendees, if you have got any questions, if you can just put your questions in the chat, and then I'll ask them to Justine. We've got a couple, but now's the time to add them because we've got about 5-6 minutes to go on this. So yeah, we've got, maybe this is quite a simple question. This is from Kanchen. Is what's the proportion of beet waste in the entire waste? Is it a large waste stream, or is it a small percentage? Have you got any ideas on that, Christine?
You mean in the UK? I don't have numbers.
Yeah, you can start with the UK.
I don't have numbers, but it's huge. I can provide this. We have this somewhere. It's huge, and it's increasing. Is linked sort of to the increased uptake, in particular of beet juice and concentrate, for example, in athletes and exercise. Under exercise, we know that there are some beneficial effects related to that in particular. So that has absolutely pushed demand.
Yeah, brilliant. We've got another question, which is around, I suppose it's taking these technologies through the technology readiness level. So we do the science in the university, and it's great for your presentation to see the companies you're working with and the schemes such as Innovate UK that you've been leveraging to do this research. But I mean, how are these applications being taken forward by industry, and what are some of those kind of real industry challenges? And I mean, I know from my own research experience, it's around upcycling and valorization. It's just often the cost of doing all this just doesn't make it financially viable. So I wonder if you have some ideas about the challenges of taking it from a really good paper, a really good project that meets all its KPIs on targets, to something that's actually working in industry every day.
This is a really good question, and I have to say I've been working in a project earlier, on a biorefinery project, where the company said in the end, and you really only know these things in the end, they said the production or the recovery of X and Y is too expensive, because, frustratingly, they were also really frustrated, because it can be bought cheaper on the global market. That is a huge concern. So that's kind of perhaps part of your question, right?
Yeah, because I mean, the stuff I've seen is around, the waste stream. So a lot of it, say for example, there's lots of work on brewers' spent grain. Now, spent grain has lots of potential. People are drying it, but it's often in small little breweries everywhere. So you've got the cost of collecting that, bringing it together. It's highly variable, and then the cost of processing it to turn it into something that is, from a price point, is competing with virgin material.
Yeah, it depends on the value of the material and the application. For example, if you develop feed ingredients, the margin is so little, okay? So you need in any case, you need to demonstrate that there is a bioefficacy, that it works somehow to benefit the animal. So producing something in a way that it's not expensive, that's a huge challenge then, for the amount that you want to add in. If, for example, if your application is cosmetic or human supplements, perhaps you have a little bit more headroom if it comes to how you process it or wherever you source it from. Yeah. So do you know what I mean? So bulk sourcing is important. This is also the SMEs I work with, one of them is specialized in, you really need to, just as tips also, if people are interested to work in that space, you need to link up, you need to identify the right entities. So one of my SMEs is focused on material sourcing and initial processing. So they work with all the big retailers, and then you don't have the small farm producers. You know what I mean? So it's kind of large scale already.
You've already got that stuff there.
Yeah,
I'm going to shut you off there because we've got a few more questions. And I'm conscious. No, fine. So someone's asking how we can get hold of Christine. So I mean, you can find her. Oh, Sarah's already replied to that. But you can, if you contact Global Food, they can put you in touch with Christine. I've got a question about if you wanted to learn more about food waste valorization. Are you aware of any online courses? Any resources you would recommend people go and have a look at to just educate themselves more in this area?
There's a lot of literature out there. I would look for reviews in particular. So if you do simple search, I can pinpoint to some maybe key publications, but there is a lot out in the space. I'm not aware of any particular training, but it's a good suggestion. We are always looking for, as part of projects, and Nick, that will apply to you as well, perhaps for opportunities to develop workshops, for example, also for the wider audience, but also internally at the university, if you think of ECR focus, or very happy to pick up on that.
Yeah, so you've just written your this is the answer to your question, Eston. So I mean, I think some, in terms of courses, I mean, if you have a look at organisations like RAP in the UK, they do a lot in this area and they recommend resources. If you also have a look at, I think it's Refeed in America, they do a lot of Refeed, I can't remember, but they do a lot on this kind of area around waste and things you can look at. I can't remember, in Scotland there's a similar thing to RAP, Zero Waste Scotland, I think. So there is lots of resources there. And also just use keywords like circular bioeconomy. There's lots of areas around there. I think we'll go to the last question. And
just to mention, I think that the World Wildlife Foundation, the two pamphlets I mentioned on the slide, RAP is also involved in these. So if you look via RAP, actually, you will find them as well. Yeah,
brilliant, thanks. So this is from Rob McIntyre, and it says, we use a Bokashi brand system to break down kitchen waste with effective microorganism bacteria. Have you done any work in this area? Have you tried it? Any thoughts on this, Christine?
So can you just say what is that?
Yeah, so this is about breaking down kitchen waste with bacteria. Is this something you've looked at? Yeah.
So we are not working at present with kitchen waste. So we're working with processing, overproduction and processing waste. But we have worked with fermentation as an approach to stabilize material as well as convert material or use it as sort of to generate metabolites which are desirable. So no and yes.
Okay,
if that makes sense.
So yes, fermentation, yeah. So fantastic. So just thanks to all the participants for joining. Don't forget, get involved with the GFEI at the University of Leeds. We've got the website there, so you can sign up and become a member. Yeah, great pointing to it. Yeah, and if you've got any more questions for Christine, you can find these. And the recording will be sent around as well. And also big thanks to you, Christine. Brilliant, great to hear what you're doing.
Well, thank you, Nick. Thanks so much. And I think it ties in, as I said earlier, with other topics or that have been presented as part of this webinar or seminar. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.